Hi everyone, my name is Michael, CEO and founder of Success Tutoring, and I'm here with Allan, Head of Global Partnerships, and we look forward to having the conversation today. So thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Michael.
So today's going to be especially important because we're going to be sharing a lot of insight. I mean, you've been in the education industry for many years. I've been in the education industry for about 8 years now. Started Success Tutoring. I'll share a lot with you about the history of Success Tutoring, and I'm sure you'll also be sharing a lot about your experiences as well. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Great, me too.
Yeah, terrific. So we'll start off a little bit about your experience. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience in education? And I mean, you used to run the whole Kumon operation, so a huge organisation. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I mean, not my entire time was I running the show, but eventually I was running the show. I actually started there in my in my mid-20s, I think, area manager roles. This is a sort of basic entry-level role, and eventually worked my way up. You know that through your own experience that education is a pretty powerful thing. And I think the attractive thing for me about Kumon was the way people were so passionate there, and education can affect you in different ways. Educational experiences affect you in different ways. And I certainly started to connect with that when I started there. Not so long after that, I'm a person that puts my hand up for projects. If the boss is like, is anyone interested in helping with it? My hand's already up in the air. So that's one of the reasons I actually moved pretty quickly to run the Perth operations or WA operations. And did that for 3 years. So that was, I was over there by myself. So I really had to connect with the work and represent the methodology and all the rest of it. I'd always wanted to work in Sydney. So I basically invented a national role, and eventually convinced my boss to let me move to Sydney. And I loved it. So that was national. You had to think in much more broad terms. And that was more about communication. It was education, but it was communication, how to communicate with parents, the awards, what awards would you give, conferences, that sort of thing. And one of the conferences went so well because we'd done some real in-depth student profiles, some really amazing case studies where you really get into the what difference has this made type of territory. And it basically made everyone cry at the conference. Wasn't my original intent, but the regional president at the time for Asia, he was down, and he Japanese guy, and I was actually interpreting for him at the end of the conference. I, for various reasons, speak Japanese, so and he just danced the jig, actually on stage. He said, "I feel really happy. I feel so happy I could dance," and he danced the jig. So he invited me to do a similar role regionally across Asia, which I went up and did that. And I learned heaps while I was in Asia, and then eventually with the new president, he sent me back down to Australia. So can you get down there and re-inject the method and energy and make that place grow again? Because my entire time it hadn't really grown.
Yeah, terrific. That's really cool. So did you start, so you mentioned you started when you were 20. Did you start tutoring when you first,
Not
began
when I was
working in
20.
the organisation?
If we have to reveal the ages, I was 26, I think. 20.
Okay.
There's an area manager, you're responsible for the growth and development, the improvement, also the compliance, adherence to the methodology itself.
Yeah.
So I was doing it, and from time to time you're in there working as a tutor, and you're working sometimes instead of, because the head instructor can't be there for whatever reason, so you're running it those days. And sometimes they discontinue, or they're discontinued, if you like, and so you have to go in there until you've found a new franchisee. You have to run it. So I did that a number of times.
So you ran a lot of the tutoring centres as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And how many centres, when you first started with Kumon in Australia, how many centres did they have?
400, more than 400.
400, okay. Yeah. And how many locations did they have when you were running as a CEO of the organisation?
It had reduced. So across, I think Australia had 300, New Zealand had about 35.
Yeah, okay. And why do you think it reduced?
Uh, I, I think there was a long period of replacing people,
Yeah.
but then sometimes the return on that wasn't quite there. And I think before my time, there was some management had made decisions to just not replace and focus more on quality rather than continuous spread.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, cool. All right, well, that's really interesting. I mean, Kumon's it's a world player in education, one of the leading education brands in not only in Australia but in the world as well. So, I mean, I think Kumon, correct me if I'm wrong, they were one of the first players in the market in Australia, right? I mean,
yeah, well, it started in Australia in 1984.
Yeah,
so that's a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I'll be sharing a little bit, background about myself as well, and maybe we can share notes and a lot for the viewers as well to get a bit of an insight.
Great.
So, starting Success Tutoring in a spare room in my parents' house when I was 17. It was a similar room to this. It was like 3 by 2 really, and that's where the business started. And I did it straight out of high school, so. I think one of the things that really inspired me to start Success Tutoring is to motivate, inspire, and uplift. And those 3 words are very important because they're actually painted across all the tutoring centres that we have. And those are the 3 main words that really, hold on. And that's what really motivates us. And that's our core mission as an organisation. So I started the business, in a spare room. Studied a Bachelor of Commerce, majoring in Management and Commercial Law at the University of Sydney. And while studying, I was running the business. And so I signed my first lease, I think, at the age of 20 or 21. And it was quite frightening, actually. Being with, signing a lease, I had no idea, had no family members, no one that really told me how to do it. All my family, some of them ran businesses, but it wasn't to the extent where they've, had commercial leases or anything like that. So I had to teach that all by myself. And it was a really interesting experience, running the business. And I had 3 locations while I was at uni, and then I ended up franchising the brand. And it was good, but then COVID hit. So as soon as we franchised the brand, we opened up 2 locations. One was in Melbourne and one was in Sydney. COVID hit. It was a very big challenge for the organisation, and I made a big change to the business, and that was making it into a membership-based business model. And what that means is it's like running a tutoring business, but like a gym. So what it was like pay per week with no lock-in contracts for families. And so we have an app that allows the parents to do all the bookings and things like that. So it's not a per term basis or per session basis. And that's really one of the key drivers or key differences when we made that change, allowed us to continue to grow and become Australia's fastest growing franchise. And I'm really, glad that I met you, Allan, and that now you're leading you're the head of global growth and performance. I should say the head of. Maybe you can end up doing some growth and performance, but the head of global partnerships at Success Tutoring, and we continue to work together. So it's a really, really exciting journey for Success Tutoring and for working together.
Can I ask you a question? Like before you started the business, you'd been tutoring.
I did. I did a lot of tutoring.
What happened? What did you see, or what was your experience that made you think there's a gap here, there is a space here to do it differently? What was going on?
Well, I haven't really told everyone this story, so I haven't publicly gone out. So I'll share it now with you. So when I was in high school, I wasn't actually doing very well at school. I mean, I got a good ATAR eventually, but one of the subjects that I did very poorly in was mathematics. And my mum would actually drive me all across Sydney. We went to about 10 tutoring businesses all across. It was a combination of different, it was the franchise brands, the independents, the one-on-ones, and it all didn't, nothing actually helped me. Mathematics was a very, very big challenge for me, and I never ended up doing very well in it. I got a good ATAR, so, and ATAR is like, the Year 12, results, for those that know, and I ended up getting to one of the best universities in the country. But what really ignited my passion to start tutoring was the fact that I realized that the tutors that motivated me and believed in me and were very close to my age, they're the ones that were the most effective. And I had tutors for other subjects. Okay, like for example, English and business studies, economics and legal. So these were some other subjects that I got tutoring for. So the ones that really believed in me and said to me, you know, and they used to actually do this, and I encourage all tutors at Success Tutoring to do this, is he used to actually message me before my exam and say, good luck, I'm sure you'll smash it. And that really helped me because I was like, okay, cool. I feel like I'm very confident in my ability now because someone else believes in me. And that really helped me. There were other, you know, tutors that helped, but the ones that really made like a big impact in me were the ones that were very close to my age.
Yeah, and that's where you got those words which you know I love.
Yeah,
motivate, inspire, uplift.
Yeah,
is it from that's literally your experience.
Exactly,
that's what they did to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, no, it's that's the mission of Success Tutoring, is to motivate, inspire, and uplift. We're not just here to teach subjects. We're here to teach mindsets. We're here to really ignite the love of learning of kids, you know. And so as we continue to grow, we created personalised learning materials, and it's all based on the Australian curriculum, which is what students need. It's, you know, there are franchise brands out there which focus on, you know, assisting, but it's not really based on that national curriculum. And I think that's what makes us and puts us aside from other education franchises, is the fact that we have a program that is based on the national curriculum. Because I think that's like one of the most important things, really, right? Isn't that what tutoring's for? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, that's what the kids are studying.
Yeah.
As you know, you always ask me about Kumon, but their materials are sort of internationalised, if I can put it. They're not.
Yeah.
Originally, I think they're based on the Japanese curriculum, but not so much anymore. They have a very sparse content. So it's difficult for their franchisees to answer those questions, because it's one of the first questions parents ask. Surely it's based on the local curriculum, right? Yeah. And the answer is no. So that's a great advantage, one of the many advantages that franchise partners at Success Tutoring have. Yeah. It's a direct yes. Yeah. And here are the materials, good materials.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the cornerstone points of success that I believe will future-proof Success Tutoring and franchise partners and students alike, is that as we continue to expand, not just in Australia, but also in New Zealand and other countries, you know, creating a personalised program that's based on the national curriculum has become so vital, because it's localising it. It's like McDonald's, right? McDonald's has the Big Mac, which is very popular across the world, but there's different parts of the world where they don't have beef, for example, in India. That's an example. It's the same thing with Success Tutoring. We're not going to, I mean, the philosophy will always remain the same, right? To motivate, inspire, and uplift. And those words, we'll never remove them off the walls. They will always stay. But some things that might differ is the program. It's based, you know, whether it's based on the Australian curriculum, whether it's based on the UK, the US, or even the Cambridge curriculum, whatever it is, it's based on that particular curriculum. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So, yeah, cool. So, Allan, just talking a little bit about the current education landscape at the moment, what do you think are some of the key challenges that, mainly not in tutoring, but just education broadly speaking, is, you know, what are the key challenges that a lot of people are facing at the moment?
Yeah, it's a funny time. I think in some aspects, certain things have been building up over time and others are new. So what's been building up over time, I think there's just a voracious appetite from parents in relation to their kids, which is to say, it even doesn't matter now where you send your children to, you're not 100% satisfied. You can see that's been building up over a long time. People spend, you know, as you know, whether it's Sydney, Melbourne or another capital city of Australia, they spend $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 plus, but are still not completely assured or satisfied. That's because, you know, education and learning is a bit of a mysterious thing. So there's no guarantee. Yeah. In other words, you've got to put in the work. The question is, how do you put in the work? Do you know how to put in the work? It's like many other aspects of life. You have to train properly, not just train. Yeah. So it's the same with education. I think now the other aspect is that the insatiability of that marketplace, you know, parents, for children, I think is coupled now with we really don't know what are the key skills that you really need in the future. In other words, a lot of parents are very, very focused on what school to get into and maybe not necessarily what ATAR the kids should aim for because they're not entirely sure what course. And there's a sort of massive emphasis on what high school to go to, but not so much about, well, what course would suit you, what industry might suit you. And even there's that broader question, which is complete unknown, which nobody likes to talk about because it's uncomfortable, which is we're not really sure which industries will be around.
Yep.
So therefore, what skills are necessary? So we're actually having to look back and say, fundamentally as a human being to be useful, you really need to have an ability to learn. You have to also have a belief in your own capacity to learn. You have to have good experiences about learning, and you have to be open to learning new things. So I think if you can come through your schooling with those things, you're going to be an asset. And also you have a generational shifts, which I don't know if I should speak about those things. I think what younger people want to do now is fairly open and it's fairly fluid. I find it very exciting.
Yeah.
So maybe those that are more than 10 years younger than me, someone that's in their 20s and 30s like you, are like, the world's my oyster, and then you start taking steps towards it. I find it really exciting. Whereas an older generation is like, okay, from university, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that for 5 years, and I'll change companies every so, all that sort of stuff. That's sort of, we've moved off that. And then working from home as a result of COVID, all that element's coming to say, we all know now we can be pretty independent. We all know now we can have side hustles. We all know now that there's a huge digital space that we can play in, and it's not just local, it's international. So all that's crashing into universities and TAFEs and employment. So it's a bit up in the air. And there's a huge divide in Australia, that public versus private. But I think the things that I've been speaking about are going to glue that back together to say, well, with all the forces around all this, maybe it doesn't so much matter. But you want to have motivated, positive, encouraging teachers and tutors around you. And then you'll get through with some of those experiences I've spoken about.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the development of AI and homeschooling, there's a lot of key challenges that a lot of that the education system is really facing. And I think with AI and technology, as you correctly said, we don't actually know what jobs are going to be in the future. And there's not a more important time than now to suggest that kids need to actually know how to think and learn, as opposed to rote memorization, because that was a time of the past, and it might have worked then, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work now. And I think a lot of those other tutoring businesses, and I think I'd speak a lot for my experiences as well as a student, going to tutoring, is a lot of the time it was that repetitive nature. And so the things that really motivated me or allowed me to excel were the ones that believed in me and taught me how to think. Not what to think, but how to think. And I think that's very powerful, because the school system, not just in Australia, but globally, and I speak with a lot of people, and I know many people in different parts of the world, and they have the same challenges. And the same challenges is the school system is so outdated. You've got a system where there's no personalisation happening at all, and a lot of the kids don't feel motivated. And that's why they're coming to tutoring, because tutors are there to mentor them. They're there to motivate, inspire, and uplift them. They're not there to, teach them just a subject. Teaching them, we teach mindset as well. So I think that's, really powerful.
Yeah, well, let's keep the teachers on side though. I mean, they're some. I love teachers, but
yeah.
The advantage of tutoring is there's a small one-on-one or small groups.
Yep.
The difficulty of teaching is you've got 20 or 25 or maybe 30 kids to try and personalise with. And no teacher would dispute how difficult that is. So people that stay in teaching and are good at teaching and love it, I think they deserve lots of praise.
Yep.
They get a lot of, that's another factor, which is, now I see it a lot, which is parents are very involved in their children's education. So they can put a lot of pressure on teachers.
Yep.
So it's a tough game for the teachers to be in. And no matter what a teacher does, no matter what the results are, whether the results of a student are up the top or somewhere in the middle and average and passable to the standard or below standard, parents are pretty energised and usually motivated to get in contact with the teachers. So that amount of contact and the frequency of contact, I think, between parents and teachers has risen a lot in recent years. I'm not sure whether COVID has made it more dramatised, but nevertheless, people are still finding their way to a tutor if they want extra attention. As long as they find a good tutor, i.e. Success Tutoring, then they'll get the sorts of things sometimes that they want, but sometimes they can't articulate what that is until they see their child in the space with, say one of our tutors, and they say, oh, that kind of interaction, I can see that. I didn't know that's what I was after, but that's what I'm after.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So from your experiences in Kumon, what were some of the things that worked very, very well? And what some of the challenges? What didn't really work?
Well, I'll speak broadly because, as you know, I ran things in Australia and New Zealand and Singapore and did some regional work around as well. I think the reason Kumon has continued to grow is it's just very obvious. There's the worksheets. It's pencil and paper. It's not vague and it's transparent. My child can either do it, in volume at speed, or they can't. So there's a methodology there that's linked and embedded in the materials that is about individualising. So that, generally speaking, their methodology works. The two main struggles, I think, within that network is to be personal about it. I used to always talk about personalising, not just individualising. You can individualise on data, but to make it personal means that child is here and comfortable. They know that I used to say, that you see them and you know them and you like them. These are the three things you've got to prove to them. Otherwise, it's not a personal experience. And so that's to personalise at volume of students is really difficult. So there's some very, very big Kumon centres around Australia, and anytime you're dealing with dozens and dozens and dozens of different children, to get it right each time is very difficult. The other thing is, I think in their world, to become, although there's a methodology and it's a franchise and there's lots of training, to become very, very good at it, you need a lot of experience and you need to be extraordinarily skillful in a lot of different ways. And as a franchisor, you need to be at the centre doing the actual instruction yourself. So it's a very different model. It's complicated to become very good across a lot of materials, preschool, primary school, high school, and a lot of different individuals. It's really tough.
Because I think the instructors, there would be, it's almost like it's individualized to each student, but is it more like they use a lot of their discretion as well? So for example, hypothetically speaking, if one student goes to one centre and goes to another centre, they might receive different programs depending on the experience of that particular instructor. Is that how it works, or is it?
Well, in theory, everything is recorded, and of course, I was there for a long time, so I don't want to talk it down too much. But if they move from one person or one location to another location, often there's adjustments made.
There is a bit of an adjustment,
and there's a second guessing going on. Yeah.
So, and that's completely fine. I think using the discretion of operators is important, but I think when I was designing Success Tutoring and creating the personalized program, I was very, very clear on making sure that there was absolutely no discretion. What that means is when the student does the assessment, regardless of which centre they've done the assessment in Australia, they'll receive the same program. Because I think discretion is when you have that, then it becomes inconsistent, I believe. That's not to say, because education is very versatile, it's dynamic, it's ever changing. So I think there's a lot of strengths on both sides, I think. Because again, the operators in Kumon, for example, they're the ones that are running the business. Whereas at Success Tutoring, we hire managers, for example. So it's a little bit different in that regard. So yeah, that's really cool.
And obviously, there's another main change or difference, which is the age gap, if you like, between average instructor in a Kumon centre versus a student is huge.
Yeah,
Right.
it's quite substantial,
Oh, yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I never went to Kumon when I was young, but I did go to a lot of other tutoring businesses, and the ones that really made a big impact in me were the ones that close to my age. So yeah, that was definitely something. So yeah, okay, perfect. And so what do you think is like missing right now from tutoring programs?
Well, I think educators these days have to be really magnificent communicators.
Yeah.
And I think I've thought that for a long time now, and I think that's a gap. And I'm surprised it's a gap. A lot of people just don't. There are a lot of people think, well, I'm brilliant at mathematics, so I'd be a great tutor. If I watch them do their tutoring, I always, within minutes, can see, well, it's not really about your level of mathematical knowledge.
Yeah.
So they don't pause, they over-explain, you know. So communication is also about observation skill, watching a student. You know, can you explain something mathematically in a way that the child keeps their eyes on the page? They're looking at the maths itself as you're speaking. And if they're doing that, you should hold back and hold yourself to some sort of time limit. And I used to often, I still do this, but I still say to some people, you know, try and keep your explanation to 30 seconds. And they often have that, well, 30 seconds. I say, well, in other words, don't talk too much. Because it's about the child being uninterrupted in their own headspace to say, well, I get up to here, it's from here I don't get.
Yep.
Right? So the technique should be, well, write down what you think is the next step. And the more they can solve by themselves, the more you actually get an accurate picture of, you can actually show them, well, you actually can do it.
Yeah.
It was just a hesitation, that's fine. So those sort of observation skills, the sensitivity to the moment, like be patient, listen, say a little bit, wait for a response, like really draw a student out. It's one of the most enjoyable things about tutoring.
Yep.
But I think that if I can wrap that into communication skill, I think that's missing. And that comes under the, if you could put a bigger headline on that to say, that's in a way with students, it's customer service.
Yeah.
As well as with parents, there's a whole other ball game of customer service. But I think at that student level, that's where the essence and the brilliance is.
Customer service is so important, right? I mean, we are in the business of tutoring, but customer service is so vital. It's what makes the business successful. I always say this to tutors, and it's in our training, and it is build rapport first and the results come later. Because when you build that rapport and that relationship with the student, they feel comfortable, and then that's when the results and the magic happens. Yeah. I mean, how many times do you speak to people and they say, you know, when you ask them about their experiences in school, they'll say to you, I really like that subject because of that teacher.
That's right.
So often, right? Yeah. And then when you ask a student what was your least favorite subject, most of the time it's because of the teacher as well. It's the same thing, and that's the same thing, you know, and that's why. That's what we do at Success Tutoring. We want to really ignite that passion for kids to really enjoy both English and maths and any other subject that they come, you know, into the centre with. Yeah,
I agree with you, because sometimes a student says, the way they rate themselves is very interesting to me. The student says, I'm no good at maths. I'm terrible at maths. I've never been good at maths, that type of stuff. So a good tutor can sometimes get them in the space and sort of prove to them in a session that actually you can do it. Yep. And sort of look, you know, eyeball them and like, you know, with a grin on your face, and just you have a bit of a laugh about it, to say all that stuff is in your head.
Yeah. It's mindset.
It's mindset, right? Yeah, it's exactly right. It's fascinating to me. So the page would show that you actually can do it. You know, maybe you're 10% off, but you're only 10% off. You're not 50% off.
Yeah.
So I find that fascinating in terms of what's the service that a tutor provides to the student. That's why as I've said to you many times, your thinking about it matches my thinking about it. And it's part of you have to have enough experience to be able to talk about this stuff, which you and I can talk about. But, and of course, parents don't necessarily know that. They're worried about grades, they're worried about attitude towards a subject, but they don't always see their child do the study or do the homework. Some parents do, because, you know, they're engineers, so they're really confident helping with maths and all the rest of it. So some of those households don't come to us. But Yeah, I think getting that right, and also you have to be able to communicate with parents in a soothing way.
Yeah.
So you can't, of course, you can't exaggerate.
Yep.
You can't pretend.
Yep.
So there's a vulnerability at the student level, which is why I think we can win them over, which is say, at some point the student has to reveal to the tutor what they can and can't do. And that can be very anxious moment.
Yep.
To be open and say, there's some things in maths that you go, well, I'm doing this at school, or we've done this 3 months ago, or what I'm doing now I can't do because I didn't understand that stuff 3 months ago. A tutor knows that, can figure it out, especially in maths. But to reveal that to that person, you have to be comfortable, right? And if they make you feel like a goose, it's all over.
Yeah.
So that's why I think some of the training materials you've taken me through I like the concept of how do you build rapport and what is rapport. The child has to be made to feel comfortable.
Yep.
They have to know that you're not going to embarrass them or make them to their face or even to their parents. You can't make a child feel good and say, oh, your son's a bit of a goose with maths. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So there's a balance there. Well, how do you communicate with the parent as well?
Yeah.
And how do you set out an expectation? Look, it'll be fine in about 8 weeks or 10 weeks, or we're going to work on this first, then we're going to work on that. That clarity and how you do it, and your tone of voice and your sincerity, and whether you can explain to a parent that in ways you know their child.
Yeah.
Both motivational or their attitude to the subject, but also actually concrete terms. I think that stuff is part of the art and the craft, right?
Yeah, that's right. Customer service is paramount. That's why I say when we're looking for franchise partners, right, and we're recruiting them, we want to select the ones that have that customer service and that experience. They don't necessarily have to be academics or have experience in teaching. That's fine, because that's taken care of. We've got the processes and the systems. We can train for that, but you can't train for personality. And that's why as well, the customer experience training that we have in Success Academy, which is the online platform that all of our franchise partners, tutors, and and managers have access to. And you've gone through the training as well, and you've seen it's really, really important that the customer service is number one, because as you correctly said, that you could be the best teacher in the world, but if you don't have that customer experience and that when the student comes into the centre and they don't feel like at ease and they feel confident and motivated, then they're not going to get the results. So, yeah. One thing that makes Success Tutoring really unique is the membership-based business model, which is the pay per week, no lock-in contracts, a Success Tutoring app which allows all the bookings and that flexibility. How important is that, and how does it compare to a traditional, tutoring model where it's like pay per term or pay per hour?
Well, these days people don't want to be locked into anything, right? So that's one of the things I thought was very clever about what you'd done. So there's two aspects. There's the flexibility of it because, as you say, I wonder whether the burden for some organisations is they overly lock people in for months or 3 months, a quarter, or a school term or a year, and it's all paid up, and so that's hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars in advance. So then the parents just gets maybe it's billed every so often, so that's a reminder of are we satisfied and all that. So there's no and then it takes weeks to withdraw, and nobody really wants to talk about money. So I think gifting the parents that flexibility is genius. And there's another aspect that I think most other organisations aren't very good at, is how do you build a sense of belonging? So inviting a sort of membership, not just in payment for the parents and the flexibility, but a sense of a sort of membership mindset or a atmosphere around the place in all parts of the operations is one of the things I think parents are after and students are after. Like, why should I keep coming back here? Are there other advantages and what's this all about? Not many other, and we're building a lot of that stuff. But other organisations, it's just like, well, you're a paying customer and kind of that's that. There's no other benefits. So I like the model.
It's a very community-based business, right? It's about building a community. It's not just about learning or teaching. It's much more than that. It's being part of a community where they can make friends and they can, be mates with the tutor, things like that. And I think that's what creates a community, Success Tutoring.
This is another aspect of growing up these days and raising children, and it's something I think a lot of adults struggle with, but in terms of them being adults. But it is really important to build lots of different communities, have your children engaged in lots of different communities and have mates, as you say, in lots of different parts of life. Not just school-related friends, but sport-related friends, maybe your tuition group, maybe it's music, maybe your volunteers, all these different communities, because that's gone away over the last decades, and it's really important we raise children in that way. That's why it's one of the cooler aspects of Success Tutoring, to try and build up a community in all sorts of ways. And we'll question ourselves constantly about what is community and how do we build our community and make it, overlap with other communities out there.
Exactly, yeah. And I think the community aspect's more important than ever now, especially with the development of online. And a lot of parents and families are opting in for homeschooling for their kids. And so there is a little bit of a gap there in the community aspect for their kids. And so that's why they're looking at, tutoring organisations like Success Tutoring to help supplement that as well, and complement it to some degree. So there's definitely a lot of demand in that space. So talking a little bit more about Success Tutoring's approach. So there are some key aspects. I think one of them is that personalised approach. The second is it's based on the national curriculum, and also the membership-based business model. So we've gone through those three main ones. If you were to summarise, Allan, Success Tutoring in one sentence, if someone was to ask you, what does Success Tutoring do, what would that be?
That's putting me on the spot. Could have told me about that one. I think I'd say Success Tutoring is at the vanguard of perfecting a personalised learning experience where the students grow and feel motivated, inspired and uplifted.
Yep.
That'd probably be my sentence.
Okay, that's really good. I mean, I think you'd know what my...
Is it pass-fail or...?
I think you know what my answer to that would be. And I would confidently say, if not now, but definitely in the future, that Success Tutoring will become a global powerhouse when it comes to education, if not on the way to achieving that status, because of the personalisation and the requirement and the need for tutoring, not just in Australia, because the challenges that we face in Australia are the same challenges that other countries are facing as well. In fact, we're the lucky country, aren't we, Allan? This is the lucky country. So, and we're finding a lot of challenges here. So imagine what opportunities exist overseas, where education systems in some governments are effectively on their knees. They're really they're begging for education businesses and businesses to come in and assist them, because kids are falling behind.
Yeah. I think also the franchise partners that I know at Success Tutoring, I think some of them are not just investing. I think they will find this an intriguing model, not just a satisfying model for them in various ways compared to others, but also I think they'll probably inevitably want to spend time with students, with tutors in the space, not just outside and, vaguely involved. I think inevitably the conversation we're having, they'll be like, oh, actually, I'm intrigued. Yep. So you've got to remain in the education space and be motivated.
Yep.
But motivation ebbs and flows.
Yep.
It's not something we can always rely on. So habits, like you say, mindset, habits, these things will always trump that, and I think that's something that we can build into the franchise partners, with the centre managers, with the tutors, as well as with the students.
Yeah. What was your first reaction, like when we first met? What was your first reaction when I explained to you what we do at Success Tutoring and the Success Tutoring model?
I remember the first phone call, to be honest with you, because I hadn't really, it was by introduction, right? And the introduction was from someone I really trust do I mention his name? And at Mohan Dahl, the CEO of the Australian Tutoring Association. I've known him for 20 years, more than 20 years. So his introduction, he said, you should speak to Michael Black. And that kind of recommendation doesn't come very often. He said, I think you guys will get along really well. And I say, what makes you say that? He said, he's very passionate, very smart guy, and I think you two could do a lot together, right? So I ring you up thinking, that's unusual for mine to speak that way. And I'm, how young? He goes, pretty young. And right, so I rang you up. But, you're very grounded, very sensible, but you're very passionate. And passion meaning, you've suffered to build the business. It's not just high enthusiasm. I mean passion as in suffering passion, So I could feel that strength, not just passion and excitement. You'd done your work, and all the technical things you introduced me to over the months. I realised, well, you've done a lot of work in the background, so you know what it is you're doing, but what it is you're aspiring to. There's a lot of organisations in education. I've done a lot of consulting work too in the last 5 or so years. They have their model or they have their materials, and that's that. And that's it from 5 years ago, 10 years ago. There's sort of, we knew what we wanted to build, we built it, and that's that. So whereas from our first conversation, I thought, well, you've sort of had a vision, you've created something around that vision, but you've got an aspiration to where we're headed, and I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's a very good response.
I don't think I've ever said that to you before.
No, first time. So, yeah.
So I rang my home back and said, yeah, I did something along that kid's got it. So you need to be very, you really need to have a strong foundation in your mind if you're going to do this, and you've also got to have the chutzpah or the fortitude, to the boldness to actually take a step and create a business. That's a huge step, which sort of strengthens you and terrifies you at the same time. You've gone on and on and on, and I thought, okay, well, the attraction for me was also that it's not just the elements we've spoken about and the history, but that it's homegrown. In other words, the Kumon stuff came from overseas, Japan originally, and spread around the world. This is an Australian-based, started in Australia, thought up in the garage, came from your own personal experience. I mean, this is what founders do, right? This is what founders are all about. So you're one of those guys. Yep. You just happen to be this age, but your age has never been in my mind so much. You just bring an energy, and that's. Other than that, it's just, well, okay, just listen to Mike because he knows what he's doing. Yeah. Yeah. Never said that to you either before.
So Success Tutoring is now Australia's fastest growing education franchise, and we continue to grow. What do you think is the main aspects or the main unique points that is allowing us to grow at the scale that we're growing?
Maybe that's a question you should answer. I think I've been on some of the calls with the franchise partners or people considering, and I often ring you back after those video introductions and what have you and say, wow, they're really sharp. And a weird thing is happening that you're really attracting some very clever, smart people who ask great questions. Yeah. So educationally, I was always raised to say you might not always know the answer, pal, but it really pays in life to know how to ask really good questions. So to be able to ask good questions, you've really got to be a thinker. You've got to think between the lines. While you're listening to the line, you've got to think between the lines. And the people you're attracting, it doesn't surprise me that I didn't expect it, but I'm often amazed at the detail and insightfulness of their questions.
Yeah.
So when those people come on board, assuming they've signed later on, I think they're going to pay attention to the detail. Who do they hire? How do they follow up the training? How do they make sure it's all in place? How do they make sure that the details of customer service from the student's perspective and the child's perspective and in community engagement is all there? I've no doubt they'll do it. Plus, the exciting thing for me is the community of franchise partners is going to, and I know how open you are to ideas and how much you encourage the sharing. I think it's probably that's making me think, oh, they know they're joining an open organisation led by an open-minded person, which I say is part of the aspirational thing you have going on. Well, it's not perfect. It's good. It can be better, and let's head onwards and upwards. That's what I think is probably those attracting the right people.
Yeah. I think one thing that makes Success Tutoring unique as well is the fact that we don't just attract owner-operators, we attract investors, people that are looking to get out of the 9 to 5 that may not necessarily dedicate, full-time hours to the business, but they may hire a manager, or they can go into a partnership where there's an investor and then that investor is partnering with a experienced teacher, as an example. So we've built the model from the start to be able to cater for those investors as well. So those are the main, I think, one of the main aspects that makes Success Tutoring, very successful. I also believe that the team that we have, within the head office and, having you join our team as well and being able to grow together, the team, the knowledge and the wisdom and the experience, that trumps so much. I think ideas are great, execution is better. And when you have a really good team with a lot of experience, you can achieve some amazing results.
Yeah, and I think some people are out there looking at franchises. There's always been the franchising thing, right? In the industry, people are, well, should I be into mowing the lawn or, gardening stuff, or an education franchise or a food and beverage? Yep. I always think, well, you have to think about where you want to put your money, where you want to put your interest, because being at a party and you say, oh, I've just invested in a franchise, and you're not interested in talking about it, I think it'd be a weird situation. Yeah. So you've created a great model for franchise partners. I could say that for a fact. And I think it's also interesting because you do want to have that element where if you're at not a dinner party, but you're out with friends or whatever, what are you doing lately? And your answer is, I've just invested in this franchise Success Tutoring, become a partner, and it's really great because blah, 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 blah. You want people to have that confidence but pride. So I want to tell you about it. And, I think you're attracting people that are pretty well networked, have lots of different communities they can tap in. And, as you always encourage them to say, you want to tell everyone you know. And I'm pretty confident they would be, because it's not an established brand like a Kumon or these other ones. So you're not buying into all that. You're buying into something more exciting, which is it's on the move. Yep. This is why I'm also attracted to it, to say it's homegrown, it's clever, it's evolving, it's building and strengthening, but get in now, and be part of it. And that's what I say about that community. Well, let's share ideas and to be open to that, to say you invite franchise partners to contribute to the strengthening of the whole box and dice. That's fantastic. Instead of like, well, we've been doing this for 100 years and here it is and don't change it, and,
Yeah,
good times to be part of it.
Exactly. And I believe, Allan, that the success of any organisation is its ability to adapt and change. And I think we'll always be constantly adapting and improving, because that's what makes any great organisation great, is the ability to adapt and to listen. I always love to hear feedback from franchise partners, from tutors, from anybody, because the more feedback we get, the more we can grow. It's like a snowball effect. I think one of the biggest benefits of being part of a franchise network is that snowball effect. It's the ability to be able to share ideas together and be able to learn from each other and grow. One thing that makes Success Tutoring really unique, and it's allowed us to grow rapidly, is the very quick, fast return on investment period. And as you know, we actually sign up the customers before the business opens. So we're one of the only tutoring organisations in Australia or even in the world that sign up the customers before the business opens, which provides a very, very good business model for a lot of franchise partners, because it reduces the risk for them and ensures they get started and they can, motivate, inspire and uplift the students, and they can really make an impact from the start. And, many of our locations, we had many locations open, in the last few months. Many of them had 50, 60, sometimes even 70 students from the first week of running, which, achieves a return on investment between 12 to 18 months. So,
It's incredible.
these are things that you don't really hear in the tutoring or education space, not just in Australia, but globally. And I think that's one of the, key things as well that's attracting a lot of people to the model.
Yep. Yeah, if they're not that ferociously worried about recouping, then they're focused on things like customer service and getting it right every afternoon, or with every child, with every parent. So that's the right balance.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So, Allan, if someone's watching right now and thinking, should I buy a Success Tutoring franchise? What would you say to them?
Contact Michael. Well, it's a personal. If you've listened to all of this and you're not interested, then it's not for you. You really want to make sure you're solidly interested, and if you are, I think they should make contact. I'm not involved in that process, but they should contact you, because I think there's details that it's a process to get involved.
It is.
So but I think if what we've been discussing has resonated with people, then they should get in contact, and then they find out the concrete details.
Yeah, for sure. Because we're not here to recruit anybody that wants to open up a tutoring business. We want people that align with our values, right? That motivate, inspire, and uplift. We don't want anyone that just has a bunch of cash. That's not what we want. We do have some really good investors that do that, and they do partner with a lot of experienced teachers. But what we want is passionate people that are here with us for the long term and really make a dent in education, not just in Australia, but globally as well.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about the global picture, going international. I was going to say, I can't remember what I was going to say.
We're growing really rapidly across Australia, and we'll be expanding into each single major city and regional hub, and we'll continue to grow not just in Australia but internationally as well. We're looking for single, multi, and also master franchise rights across the globe. So I'm really looking forward to continue working with you, Allan, and achieve that success together, because I firmly believe Success Tutoring is here and it's here to stay, and we're just getting started. This is just the early days. So I'm sure we'll be doing more of these podcasts as well. You've got a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience, and I look forward to continue working together and being able to achieve and provide an amazing support for our franchise partners, of tutors, and of the community at large.
It sounds like you should write a book, Michael. I think that's the other aspect is, like, with the team is talented and young and really optimistic. I like that. We'll see how we go with a bigger profile, a bigger role, but in time. But I was just in Singapore over Christmas, and having worked, it's just so intensive. Children there do 5, 6, 7 different types of tutoring on average. It's not just one. So the intensity of that marketplace just reminded me. It's the same question. What is education for? And it's not just what do employers want, but what do you want out of your life? So you've got those long-term questions about, you need to have that adaptability, but your early opportunities are try and get it right on the way through first time. A lot of people here, sometimes it doesn't work for you, as in you're not doing well at school. But I think what we're trying to get right at Success Tutoring, by your 3 words, is to say sometimes that internal, they call it self-efficacy, right? Do I believe that I can learn this subject, or am I a reasonable student? So trying to make sure that students don't lose their sense of themselves in amongst the turmoil of schooling, especially secondary school, where all sorts of other things are going on physically, and right. So, getting the emotions there towards yourself and being kind to yourself, and knowing that there's lots of people out there who can help you. And I think it's exciting to think that Success Tutoring is one of those names that might come up. I think it's a really cool name, Success Tutoring, like, successfully navigating life, successfully getting your mind clear, and it's about you do need to develop your grades, but you need to develop your sense of, like mathematics. And you mentioned AI earlier. I didn't talked about it at the time, but, there's this danger that people underestimate. You still need to think. You still need to be a learner. You still need to be a very conscious human being. Yep. And the more we can drill, because some people say, well, you got Google, so you don't really need to know anything. Well, beware, because you get sidelined.
Yeah.
Right? So we still need to be readers, voracious readers, have good concentration, be able to learn lots of things and integrate those things and learn new skills. This is the evolution, or this is the intensive moment we're in, and I think we can play. I think we can play a big role in it, and I think we can play an increasingly unique role. In it. Happy to help.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to that. So thank you very much, Allan. It was great. If you're interested in learning more about the Success Tutoring franchise opportunity, you can go onto Google and search up Success Tutoring Franchise, or you can also search up the URL successtutoringfranchise.com, and we look forward to speaking with you.